Good morning, I'm Shagnik Banerjee, a participant of FIP4 conducted by the UGC HRDC Kumaon University. Now, this is part of the Action Research Program, which is in partial fulfillment of the FIP3 and 4 course program. Now, as part of this project, what I'm trying to do here is highlight a problem that has been an incessant part of the city space that I have inhabited since my childhood. That is the northern part of the city of Calcutta. Now, Calcutta as a city, for the past 300 years, that is ever since its inception in the late 15th century or the late 16th century, has been home to a lot of outsiders. This is a city inherently built by people who did not belong here. Right from the time when the cloth merchants, the Sheths and the Boshaks came down here from Adi Saptagram in Hooghly to later the Armenians, the Brits, the Chinese, the Portuguese, the Marwaris, and all a host of other communities who came down here, the city has seen a syncretic growth and which has been mostly seen or still existing. The traces of that has been still existing through its architecture. Now, in the northern part of Calcutta, we have seen or we see every day a lot of old buildings which are well over 100 years of age and built a style which is non-existent today in the culture of apartments and flats, and style which is going slowly absent. Now I am standing here in front of one such building, and as you see here, the Corporation of Calcutta has designated it to be a dangerous house because this house is in a dilapidated condition. And most of these buildings are residential buildings. Now this is one problem which I'm going to highlight here in this project, is that all these residential buildings, most of them, some public, some residential, are going into disuse and disrepair, and slowly we are losing that cultural heritage, that historical ethos which has defined the spaces that is part of northern Calcutta. Now, this is not just a question of history, because these buildings, these structures, most of which have developed their own sense of economy, own sense of localization, through the spaces that they inhabit, are slowly going away. Their own sense of attachment and amalgamation is slowly going away, and we are losing this touch with the past. Now, if you are asking me why should we need to keep up with the past, why should we need to preserve it? Primarily, we need to preserve it because if we do not do that, we are losing a very, very, very essential part of the history of this city, a history of the space, and also we are losing some traditional localized economy which would be absent in the modern ghettoized urban apartments that we see sprawling around here today. Now, I'm not against apartments. The problem is not with the apartments, but the problem is with the disuse and disrepair that these buildings have undergone. Now, you come here, you see this one part here. In the traditional Bengali parlance, or in the traditional structure of these buildings, this is an extension of the house itself. And this, what we call, is a rock, or a sort of extended portion which has been the hallmark of association in Bengal. In the traditional Calcutta culture, we always have talked about the adda as being an integral part of it. Anything and everything, the Bengalis love adda. And it's through the adda that a host of cultural changes that we have seen over the past maybe 100 years have taken place. Now, a very important space of that adda is this rock. Houses which has an extended portion, a sort of an extra appendage, an extra attached extension outside the peripheries of the building, which has been part of this adda, a space of this adda. Random people can sit here, random people can talk here, like the way I'm doing now, without the interference, without the obstruction or the objection of the people who are inside. Now that would not be possible today in a flat. That would not be possible today in an apartment, where you are separated, you are structurally, it's an objection from entering those spaces. But here, this syncretic, this almost organic amalgamation, this almost organic association has been there as an heritage for the past well over 100 years. Now this is going away. This is moving on. This is, and one thing that we see is also a part of this extension of it is the traditional senses of roadside sellers who are also moving on, which we don't find in the traditional apartment spaces that is there in the city. Now this is one problem which we need to highlight. The old houses of North Calcutta render it a different kind of aesthetic which highlight the city's variegated past. Old buildings such as this, with its characteristic Venetian blinds, that is, the windows and the sunshade on the veranda, are an intrinsic part of its heritage space. A space which is now being taken over by apartment buildings as the one right next to it. Notice the pillared structures around the veranda. An adaptation of the Corinthian form, buildings like these bear testimonies to a time in the city's history when the architectural style was motivated by the ruling English and the Indian craftsmen, who imbibed Western influences into forming a characteristic blend of the Eastern and the Western. The building next to it, as it looks, has fallen on hard times. The date can be seen here, 1917, that makes the age of this building to be 104 years. Some try to maintain it, and for some it remains a story which has stopped in the past, replaced by new apartment blocks which are devoid of any sense of aesthetics and are slowly obliterating the history of the neighborhood in which they are built. Preservation of the beautiful and artistic aspects of these buildings has become a social responsibility. This ornamented portion above the main entrance of a house bears the hallmark of the exquisiteness of Islamic style in architecture and art. Old neighborhoods with their distinct characteristics are fast disappearing with these structures. An essential aspect to save them lies in the effort laid on awareness of these neighborhoods, which remains an essential part of our social responsibility as people of the academia. The group Calcutta Architectural Legacies, or CAL, spearheaded by author Amit Chaudhary, is one such initiative. But their scope has so far been confined mostly to the central and southern neighborhoods of Calcutta. An almost forgotten part of this heritage neighborhood is this road, Bishokosh Lane or Encyclopedia Lane, the only road space in the world which is named after a book. It is the only one of its kind in the world. It highlights the maverick Nagendranath Boshu, a pioneering archaeologist and historian, who wrote his magnum opus encyclopedia for 27 years and finally published it in 1911, the first one in Bangla. This is the house of Nagendranath Boshu. Lack of awareness has rendered this place almost dilapidated. If Calcutta's polycultural history and the varied influences acting on it needs to be known, these buildings, which remain the last vestiges of the city's erstwhile neighborhoods, needs to be preserved and reused. Another such instance is a sprawling mansion in Bagbazar called Boshubati, which has a history connected with the Swadesi movement of Bengal in 1905. The building now is in ruins. Notice the ornate Islamic style windows and glasswork, some of which are still visible on the first floor. With a variation of the European style Corinthian pillars in a traditional Indian Hindu household, this is an architectural beauty which has fallen on very hard times, as can be noticed from its current state of disrepair and disuse. Now, to better understand the exact nature of these buildings and the problems faced by them, I managed to meet up with a member of one such residence who agreed to sit for a few questions over Google Meet. Hello, Mr. Shengupta. Thank you for agreeing to this short interview. This is part of my action research work where I'm looking at the problems faced by many old residential and public buildings of historical and artistic importance in North Calcutta. In that context, I would like to ask you a few questions.
Yes, yes, sure, please. Yes.
Well, I have come across your ancestral building in Bagbazar. May I know how old it is?
Well, as per my knowledge, it is more than 100 years. It is around 108 years old, I think. Around.
You don't live there now, I presume. Any reason for that?
No, see, it's a big family, and you understand after generations, families break up, and we all have our different occupations and preoccupations. We move along different trajectories, and so different professional and personal commitments. It's more convenient to live closer to central Calcutta.
In that situation, who looks after the house?
Well, there are some members of the larger family who maintain it. They are living there still. And we all, some of us, we try and we provide some help as far as the maintenance is concerned. But then I must admit that it is becoming logistically very difficult these days.
Could you elaborate, please?
Uh, Yes, I mean it is slightly sad, but you all are aware of this, don't you? I mean, families move apart, and the joint family that used to be is no longer there. It has suffered a break, and honestly, it's a quite a big building, very old times. So it is very difficult to maintain, and it's becoming increasingly cumbersome. And those of us of this generation, we do not, it's beyond the capability to bring everyone together for the sake of the building or the family. So it's becoming very difficult, honestly.
I understand. What do you see as the future of this house?
I don't know. I mean, we would like to keep it, but like many others in the area that you're referring to or in your own work, maybe if we get the right, some promoter or someone who would utilize this better, maybe we'll have to give it away for a good price. Maybe.
But then you will lose control of how he uses the building. I mean, in all probability, it will be demolished and a flat built in its place. I mean, it's sad considering the architectural beauty of your house.
Well, I mean, yes, it's not that we are not aware of the history of the house or the importance, but then at this point of time, it's simply beyond our control. So we can't help it. It's sad, but it's beyond our control.
Now, the problem being highlighted and assessed, the next question comes: what can be done about it? For that, we need to look elsewhere, to Srirampur, a town along the river Hooghly, which was once a Danish settlement and the seat of the first university in India, the Srirampur College, which was established in 1818. Srirampur has in the recent past seen an upgrade of its heritage structures, which were once dilapidated and worn down. The work which has been done there presents a new opportunity of adaptive reuse without inherently destroying the building structure. The court compound, which now houses offices of the government, acts as seminar halls and also lets local kids play at the ground in front of it, and it gives a vivid example of how to adaptively restore and reuse such a heritage building and yet not make this space exclusive and beyond the reach of the immediate neighborhood. The transformation of the court from the old dilapidated structure to the restored new is really a sight to behold. An excellent case study is the restaurant Bhetu, or, as the title goes, someone who is fond of rice in the traditional Bengali parlance, where the structure, which was once in disrepair and was worn out as the old archive of the court, is now a sprawling restaurant catering to many of the middle market consumers, making a new space for locals to visit for lunch, an evening snack, or even dinner. Another instance is the house by the river Hooghly belonging to an erstwhile zamindar, which was taken up by Vivekananda Nidhi and is now an institute of value orientation and environmental education. Also, the recently upgraded Danish Tavern, which was a flagship project of the Srirampur initiative of the National Museum of Denmark, has been transformed from a ruin to a posh upmarket restaurant, and the erstwhile danger-infested road near the riverbank is now a bustling thoroughfare. It would be impossible to highlight the heritage restoration and reuse work done by the Srirampur initiative in a short video. However, this can serve as a blueprint for restoration work through which, if not all, at least some of the buildings can be saved, through a private and public partnership where spaces can be used either fully or partially, where they will provide the necessary costs for the upkeep and maintenance of these pieces of history of a syncretic past. This video documentation, I hope in a little way, will help to create an awareness to whosoever witnesses it. By uploading it on YouTube, sharing it. I hope people will see it, and that will create the social awareness necessary for these wonderful pieces of history to survive and perhaps even thrive. Though most of the photos and videos have been shot by me, some photographs, as mentioned in, has been procured from the websites of Calcutta Architectural Legacies and the Sirampur Initiative page of Tegnestuin Radvad under architect Fleming Alund.